What's going on, sports fans? This your boy Herschel Robinson, aka Herschel 47, and this is another episode of Sports We Watchin Livin Talkin. All right, guys. First, I want to mention, man, why don't you go ahead and follow me on Instagram, man? My Instagram handle is Herschel47. That's why you keep hearing me mention that. It's a good place, man, just for you to find out the latest. Obviously, I'm going to always promote my podcast on Instagram and Facebook and everything. And if you follow me, man, I promise you won't miss anything. You always know when I'm dropping another episode. I also want you to subscribe to this channel, guys, because that's the surefire way to not to miss anything. But today, I want to talk about the most interesting or the hottest topics right now in the world of sports. So I'm going to get into why the Saints are better off without Drew Brees moving forward. Why Jameis Winston will surprise people and end up being the quarterback that he was drafted to be. Why it didn't work out in Tampa. I'm going to explain why the Cleveland Browns lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. The real reason why Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston. And it's a topic and an issue that most people aren't really talking about or addressing. What the Baltimore Ravens can do to improve their team or to be able to get to the next step or climb the hurdle that they seem to be having when they get to the playoffs. And Giannis Antetokounmpo. You know, it's been a lot of talk about Giannis not guarding his opponent's best scorer since last year, especially because he won the Defensive Player of the Year last year, and there's been a lot of talk about that, and I'm going to address that as well. All right, so we're going to get into it. Start off hot, man. We're going to talk about Drew Brees first. All right, so first, I want to preface this by saying I'm a Saints fan. I'm a Saints fan, man. As you can see, there's a Saints hat right here, and there's a helmet right here, Saints hat. So I am a Saints fan. I even got a Drew Brees jersey. All right. So obviously, I've probably seen, since Drew Brees became the Saints quarterback, I've probably seen about 90, at least 85% of the televised games, local televised Saints games. Regardless of where I was living, whether I was still in college, I was living in Atlanta, Virginia, or where I'm currently in Texas. All right, so I've paid close attention to Drew Brees. I'm a big fan of what he's done for the New Orleans Saints. I got mad love for Drew Brees, man. And when he made the comments that he made in regards to the anthem leading up to the season, I took the approach of forgiving him more, probably more or quicker than maybe a lot of people did. And so for me, man, it's bitter. It sucks because we've come to that road where we know he's probably going to retire, or we have a good indication, especially the report that Jay Glazer had before the game on Fox. But I'm going to tell you why Drew Brees he hit his cliff before this season. He started to show signs in 2017. That's when I first started to see it. I know I'm new. This podcast is new, so I don't have any evidence out there to prove my claims. But there's a lot of people that know me that have been trying to get me to do a podcast that I've been saying this to for the past few years, that Drew Brees has shown signs that he's not the player that he once was. So I would say that in 2016, that was the last year that he threw for over 5,000 yards. Okay, so in 2016, I think his completion percentage was 70%. He threw for 38 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. So there was a long period that Drew Brees when it was after the Bounty Gate scandal, where the NFL took away the Saints, I think their second round picks 2 years in a row, and they suspended Sean Payton for a year, and some other coaches got suspended, where it really put the Saints in a tough predicament in terms of trying to build their team moving forward. And they went through a stretch of where their defense was horrendous. And for the Saints to stay in games, Drew Brees had to throw the ball 45, 50 times a game. I mean, they had to score 40-some points just to be in the game and have a chance to win. So that's why he was slinging so much. That's part of the reason why you see he's had, I believe, five different seasons of throwing for over 5,000 yards. He's the only quarterback to have multiple seasons of doing that. There's only a few other quarterbacks that's thrown for over 5,000 yards in the season. The most recent was Patrick Mahomes. The first one to do it was Dan Marino. Tom Brady's done it before. Peyton Manning's done it before. And believe it or not, Matthew Stafford has done it before. So those are the only quarterbacks that have thrown for over 5,000 yards, but Drew Brees has done it 5 times. Now, in 2017, you notice there was a little bit of a shift in the game plan or the offensive philosophy of the Saints. It started to be a little bit more run heavy, a little bit more conservative, more short passing game, and it wasn't as many big plays. They still took some shots down the field, but it wasn't as frequent. And I think a lot of that was to protect Drew Brees, but then also too, I think his arm started to wear down a little bit in 2017. Where I think he really hit his cliff was in 2018. That's when he hit the cliff. Because at that point, they stopped taking shots at all. The New Orleans Saints under Sean Payton, ever since he got there, were known, especially going into halftime, for taking that 50-yard shot down the field and putting up a quick 7 going into halftime. And they used to put teams in really bad positions. But that was no longer in the game plan once you got to 2018. So this past Sunday, they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? This is what happened. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for the most of that game, they played man. They manned up, played tight coverage. And what happened was, when teams or defenses do not have to fear you throwing over the top of their heads or behind them, and all they have to do is guard you for 15 yards, it really makes it tough to create some space so that you can gain some yardage in your passing game. And even makes it even harder in the running game because you're going to have safeties in the box. And so you're running against 8 in the box. And I'm going to tell you, man, as a former linebacker myself, I played linebacker in college. And you're already 5 yards off the ball. So if you're not going to throw the ball more than 10 yards, that linebacker only has to drop back 5 yards. So he's really right there waiting, right where where you're going to throw the ball. Now, like I said, I mentioned man coverage. They mostly ran man coverage. They really didn't really blitz a whole lot like Todd Bowles usually does. And so there was quite a few turnovers. The Saints pretty much gifted the game to them, and even in that, they still had a chance to win. So, the narrative is that the most of those turnovers were Drew Brees' fault. So he had 3 turnovers, and he had and there was 1 fumble by Jared Cook. So 2 of those turnovers were on Jared Cook. All right, there was a slant that Jared Cook ran. The DB was tried to jam him on the line. He got off the jam, and he beat him inside. But as a football player, especially somebody that has, I think, 13 years of experience in the NFL like Jared Cook has, you should know when you're in tight man coverage, even if you create a little bit of space, once you get the ball, every defender in the NFL is taught to strip the ball. We see this all the time. Even when they tackle the ball. They go after the ball. We seen in the Chiefs game, Sorensen. I think it was Sorensen when he tackled Higgins. He went straight for the ball. This is what these defenders are taught. Even on sacks, what do defenders do? When they sack the quarterback, they're not trying to just go for the big hit. They're trying to strip sack. They're going for the turnover. And so to me, it is a lack of awareness and real-time football IQ and habits, quite frankly, for Jared Cook in that situation. Once he caught the ball, to not tuck it. He started carrying it like a loaf of bread. You're taught as a football player to have 4 points of pressure on the football. And I know for me, anytime that when I was young, when I was in 8th grade, my first year playing football, and I played running back, and I also played like a stand-up defensive end in a 52 defense. But when I would get the handoffs, when I would go in against the crowd, I would always keep 2 hands on the ball. The only time I would take that top hand off and tuck it with one hand is when I got in the open field. And so that's where I would blame that turnover on Jared Cook. There's an interception that Drew Brees threw to Jared Cook. That was on Jared Cook. It hit Jared Cook, I think, in the head or the chest, and it bounced off of him. And all the DB had to do was catch. He stepped out of bounds. They were in the Saints territory on that turnover. I think that one happened in the second half. The other 2 interceptions that Drew Brees threw, I say one of them was his fault. So the one that he was targeting Alvin Kamara on, actually Tampa Bay ran a zone defense. It was on 2nd and 9. Excuse me. And it looked like they were running like a cover 2 zone. Excuse me, because I think the corner was a hard corner. When I say hard corner, I mean the corner was basically guarding the flats. And instead of sitting down in the zone, because that's what you're taught when, as an offensive player, when the defense is running zone, you have to find holes in the zone. Even if you're supposed to run a route, and typically you would carry out before a route, you're taught to sit it down. And I think when Drew Brees threw that ball, he was anticipating Alvin Kamara to sit down between Devin White and the other defender that was and right there for him to throw it to him. And in the NFL, you can't wait for guys to get open and then throw it to him. You have to anticipate. And so as bad as it looked, I believe that interception was actually on Kamara. He didn't see the same thing. He was supposed to sit down. The one to Michael Thomas, I would put that on Drew Brees. Because the moment that he snapped that ball, it looked like he just had eyes for Michael Thomas the whole time. He was going to throw it to him no matter what. So the cornerback jammed Michael Thomas. It looked like he was trying to run a slant. And instead of trying to run the slant, what he did was he just broke it off and turned it into a flat route. And Drew Brees tried to force it to him. He threw it inside, and it made an easy pick for Sean Murphy-Bunting. And so now he can call Michael Thomas old slant boy, right? So he returns it. I think that was around the 30-yard line. He returns it to about the 3-yard line. And so all Tampa Bay had to do was punch it in, 3 yards, okay? So I would say out of all of the turnovers, actually, that was the only one that I would say that was Drew Brees' fault. Now, with that being said, the reason why I'm saying the Saints are better off with Drew Brees, without Drew Brees going forward, is because he cannot stress the defense. Like I said earlier, ever since 2018 in particular, I've noticed that he has not been able to throw the ball, I would say probably more than 20, 25 yards. And I used to joke about it, but it really became serious. You started to notice in 2018, the first defense I noticed that figured out or exposed Drew Brees and the Saints offense was the Dallas Cowboys in 2018. The Saints were on a long winning streak. Okay, I think they won about 10 games in a row. And then on November 29th, they had to go to Jerry's World and play the Dallas Cowboys. Drew Brees threw for about 127 yards. His completion percentage was 64. At first look, it seems nothing's wrong with that. His average yard per completion, though, was 4.5 yards. All right? Well, Dallas, what they did, much like Tampa Bay did most of the game, is they manned up didn't really blitz much. They just manned up on the receivers and the tight end and said, Drew, we don't believe that you can throw the ball over our heads, throw it behind us, and get behind the defense. We don't think that that's part of your offense. And sure enough, it worked. Drew Brees only had one interception. I think he should have had more because honestly, he was throwing the ball all over the place, and the receivers were having to adjust and make circus catches all game long. But that was the first time I saw a defense implement that strategy and really expose the lack of deep threats or chunk plays in the Saints offense. And I'm really surprised more defenses have not done it since 2018. And to be honest with you, I truly believe this. If every defense after that had employed that same strategy, we probably would have seen Drew Brees retire after last season. Because the truth would have hit him and he would have realized, look, man, the Saints can't win with me anymore, and we don't even have a legitimate shot to win the championship, which is the reason that supposedly he came back this year anyway, was to try to win a Super Bowl. So that's why, again, these are the reasons why I believe that the Saints are better off without him. Now, if you notice in the game, when their longest pass play was when Jameis Winston came in the game, and it was a play, a flea flicker type play that Sean Payton took from the Chicago game the week before and implemented in their offense. And I've seen multiple times even with Taysom Hill, I've seen them sub Drew Brees out, bring in Taysom Hill for deep pass plays. And hell, a lot of people kind of overlook those types of things. I'll give you another example as to you have to really pay attention when coaches do things like that. Andrew Luck, when he came back from his labrum tear shoulder surgery, when he's playing for the Colts, that season, every time they needed to throw either a Hail Mary or a really deep pass, Frank Wright would always substitute Jacoby Brissett in there. He would always substitute Jacoby Brissett. And a lot of people wonder, man, can Andrew Luck throw it deep down the field anymore? Does he have the same arm strength? And I'm going to tell you, man, as someone who has had labrum tears, I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, one on each shoulder. All right? Both of them were labrum tears, and they were almost completely around. And my most recent one was March of this year, right before the pandemic shut down. So I was probably one of the last people that actually have surgery before they started to postpone surgeries. And I went through physical therapy. All right? And I'm still trying to gain my strength. I got my range of motion, most of my range of motion. It's not fully like it was in terms of before the surgery, but I've got most of my range of motion, but I still don't have my strength. And that's going to take quite some time. And so, with those types of injuries, man, like, you may never get that same arm strength that you had before when you have a labrum tear. And so I truly believe that Drew Brees' labrum tear he had with the San Diego Chargers, they were still San Diego at that time, it caused him to age probably faster than what he would have in terms of his football ability. Maybe he would have aged more like Tom Brady if it wasn't for that injury. But if it wasn't for that injury, the Saints may not have had him anyway, because the Saints were the only team that wanted to sign him. The Dolphins had a chance to get him. That was back when Nick Saban was the head coach, and the medical staff didn't approve of his physical and everything. The Saints was the only team to give him a chance, and so that's why I say, man, like with things like that, you have to pay attention to that. If a quarterback is never the one to throw that deep pass, they always substitute him out. His longest pass is a 15, 20 yards. And I'm going to tell you, man, the NFL is as athletic as these guys are and as smart as they are. You cannot consistently beat teams without taking shots. You have to back up the defense. You have to soften up their coverage. There's no way, especially once you get to the playoffs and you play really good teams, you can't make a living like that. You will not win a Super Bowl. I dare you to find a Super Bowl team or a team that's won a Super Bowl with an offense like that without taking shots. Even Tom Brady, when he was with the Patriots, as much as their offense was predicated off of throwing inside the numbers, checking it down to the running back, those short passes, he still took some shots. Heck, sometimes they would be shots up the seams. Sometimes Grunt would run go routes in the slot. Sometimes they would line them up wide. They still took shots. You have to test the defense. You have to back them safeties up. And unfortunately, the Saints haven't been doing that under Drew Brees. Now, a lot of people, question when Drew Brees got injured, Taysom Hill was the starting quarterback for that time frame. All right? They went 3-1. And the reason why they didn't start Jameis Winston is because this is the first year that Jameis has been on this team. There's a lot of concepts in Sean Payton's playbook, and I don't believe that you can fully have a full grasp and do everything he wants, that first year. And keep in mind, there really wasn't a real training camp this year. We've had COVID-19, so it's been a weird year. So he wasn't able to get the reps and all that type of stuff. So you also have to keep that in mind. That's why they didn't start Jameis this year. People refer to when Teddy Bridgewater started last year, they went 5-0 with him. That was the second season Teddy Bridgewater was on the team. You see what I'm saying? They were 5-0. All right? Now, notice I'm giving these records that the Saints had without Drew Brees. And I mention this because this team it's been a championship caliber team since 2018. They've been winning kind of in spite of Drew Brees' lack of arm strength. The defense has been really good. They've got one of the best running backs in the league. They got one of the best receivers in the league. But again, like I said, moving forward, for them to have a chance to really compete for a championship, Jameis Winston is going to have to develop and be the quarterback that he was drafted to be in Tampa Bay. And the reason why it didn't work in Tampa Bay was because of coaching. That was one of the issues. The defense was trash. It was horrible. There was nowhere near to what it is now in Tampa Bay. He never really had a running game, and some of that's on him, the turnovers that he threw. He played YOLO ball, but there was also times that his receivers gave up on routes as well. And Tom Brady even dealt with that at times earlier in this season, where Mike Evans or some of them guys, sometimes they would give up on routes. So keep that in mind. His offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay was Dirk Cutter. Dirk Cutter is a real pass-heavy offensive coordinator. I've never seen his offenses have balance. Ask Atlanta Falcons fans. His first tenure with the Falcons as the OC, his running backs were Devontae Freeman and Steven Jackson. All right? Now, them guys couldn't even average 4 yards per carry. Why is it that when they fired that coaching staff and then they brought in Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator the next year, all of a sudden the Falcons had a really good running game. Devontae Freeman makes the Pro Bowl. You understand what I'm saying? Like, some of that is concept. Some of it is, when do you call the run? Are you calling them in advantageous situations? What does the box look like when you calling the runs? Is the quarterback checking to runs in the right situation? All of those things are important. So Dirk Cutter didn't do well in Atlanta in the first stint. He goes to Tampa Bay. He gets the offensive coordinator job under Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith was the head coach at the time. Well, after, I think, in one season, they fired Lovie Smith. They didn't want to lose Dirk Cutter to another team, because I think at the time he was a hot name for a potentially head coaching job. And so they promoted him to the head coach position. I believe that was an error. That's where they had an opportunity to position Jameis to develop properly moving forward. And when they promoted Cutter to the head coaching position, they did that with the intent of keeping the continuity, and they didn't want Jameis to have to learn a new system. All of this time, Cam Newton was still considered a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Over the course of Jameis' tenure in Tampa Bay, Cam Newton won MVP one of those years. The Carolina Panthers were a consistent playoff team. The Falcons went to the Super Bowl. They were a good team a few years. The Saints have been a good team for most of his tenure in Tampa Bay. So you also have to consider that as well. And so, like I said, in Tampa Bay, there was no balance to the offense. They passed most of the time. And it got even worse when Arians got there last year because most of his offense is chucking it deep. But, with Jameis, the other point I want to make about Jameis and why he struggled in the NFL, I've noticed ever since he was in college at Florida State, Jameis has had a real issue with his vision. When he would get the calls from the sideline from Jimbo Fisher at Florida State, he would always squint. Now, for somebody to squint like that, he's probably nearsighted. I'm a nearsighted. I wear contacts and glasses. I've been wearing glasses since I was 9 years old. I didn't get contacts until my senior year in high school. Now, keep in mind, I've been playing sports since I was 7 years old, organized sports. I started playing football. My first year in football was 8th grade. I know firsthand how difficult it is to play football without, when you're nearsighted and it's blurred, without contacts or maybe a visor that has a prescription attached to it or whatever. I know how hard it is. When I got contacts my senior year and I was playing football, it was like night and day in terms of vision and my ability to see what was going on. So I can only imagine for a quarterback how difficult it would be if you have eyesight problems. And unfortunately for him, he didn't have LASIK surgery until after Tampa Bay moved on from him after last season. So now moving forward, however, hopefully it would make a difference for him. The other thing about this is a lot of people don't consider in sports and in football in particular. So when I was in college, they used to give us tape each week on the opponents and everything. We would watch tape with our position coaches. But there's certain nuances pre-snap that coaches don't typically give you. An example would be is an offensive lineman, let's say that when he pulls, when they're going to run power, the guard kind of tilts a little bit to the left or right. Maybe he's got more weight on his left foot or right foot to try to position himself to get out, to be able to get a jump start quicker so that he can pull and pick up the linebacker. All right. Maybe the wide receiver, every time he runs a 9 route or a go route, maybe he rubs his hip or something like that. There's little nuances that those things you learn from veterans. You learn from, and in the quarterback's case, a veteran quarterback. And Jameis this is the first time Jameis has had the benefit of learning from an elite quarterback, one that has done it at the highest level in the NFL. And I truly believe he's going to take those principles with him moving forward. Regardless of Drew Brees not having the arm strength and being able to throw it downfield like he used to, he still has it all up here. There's a lot of football knowledge up there that he has given to Jameis. And I'm pretty sure the type of person Drew Brees seems to be, I'm pretty sure he'll still be there for Jameis even after he retires. He'll probably be an ear for Jameis and help Jameis along the way. Patrick Mahomes had Alex Smith. Now, Alex Smith has never been an elite quarterback in the NFL, but he's won at a high level. He's consistently going to the playoffs with the Chiefs. Aaron Rodgers sat and watched Brett Favre. Now, I don't know how much Brett Favre mentored him or whatever, but I got to believe he learned something from Brett Favre for those, I think it's 3 or 4 years that he sat behind Brett Favre before he went in. And so I'm banking on that Jameis Winston will cut down on his turnovers from learning from Drew Brees, having arguably the top 3 play caller in the NFL, and then also from having his corrective eye surgery, LASIK surgery. So those are the things that I truly believe this. I think Jameis is going to finally reach the potential that everybody thought he had coming into the draft when he was drafted #1 overall years ago. So I'm really looking forward to that as a Saints fan, man. And, I got some expectations for that. You know what I'm saying? So, I truly believe, it's going to work out. All right. So talking about losses, I mentioned reasons why the Saints lost, right? Well, I'm going to kick it over to the Cleveland Browns as to why they lost. Now, everybody's talking about the fumble that Higgins had the touchback. Everybody's talking about that, and then they're also talking about the gutsy play call, that the sprint out in the trips formation, which is 3 receivers. The key conversion that Andy Reid called, and Chad Henne converted. He threw it to Tyreek Hill, and truth be told, the safety was out of position. That defense was not lined up properly, because in that situation, that defender that's manned up on Tyreek Hill has got to play his outside shoulder in that situation. And you got to have inside help to cover in case he breaks it inside. So that's a scheme error, and I'm not really going to get into that. But I am going to get into, however, the reasons for why Cleveland lost. Okay? I am going to get into that. So where it starts for me is in the first half, and there's 2 key possessions, the first 2 possessions for Cleveland. So what happened was the Browns were moving the ball pretty well. The Chiefs had already scored a touchdown and missed extra points. It was 6-0. The Browns got the ball to the 20-yard line, so they were in the red zone. And I think there was a sequence that Kevin Stefanski, the head coach and offensive coordinator for the Browns, is going to look back, if he hadn't done already, at the film and regret the play calls he went with. So it was 1st and 10, and they ran a jet sweep. So for those of you who don't know what a jet sweep is, all it is the receiver runs and he motions over from one side, and the center snaps the ball, and the quarterback hands it off to him, and it's a timing thing. He hands it off to him right when the receiver gets there, and the receiver tries to get the edge. It's the end. Typically, it's the end's job, depending on what defense you run. The Chiefs run a 4-3, so it'd be the end typically. It's supposed to contain and turn it back inside. All right? Well, the Chiefs were all over that. They ran it with Jarvis Landry. And I'm going to tell you right now, man, if I'm going to run a jet sweep, it's not going to be with a receiver that runs a 4.65. Not in the NFL, buddy. Like, Jarvis Landry is not a burner. He's slow. I love Jarvis. He went to LSU. He's really good at what he does, right? He's a good slot receiver. He's tough. He's strong. He breaks tackles. But you're not going to ever mistake Jarvis for a burner. And that's a typical play they actually would run with Odell Beckham. They used to run it with him before he got injured. But unfortunately, the Browns, they don't have any receivers to stretch the field without Odell Beckham. All of those guys are more possession-type receivers. None of them are burners. They got some size, but they don't have any speed without Odell. So I heard Ryan Clark say, well, the reason why the Browns didn't run the ball more is because the Chiefs were stopping the first half, and you seen them do it more in the second half and things like that when they made adjustments. He said that was his rebuttal to Mike Greenberg. I'm going to tell you right here, that's false. That's actually false. The only time that they really stopped the Browns was when the Browns got in 21 personnel and tried to run behind the fullback. And so when I say 21 personnel, I mean 2 backs and 1 tight end, right? And in that case, the fullback was the other running back. It was the fullback, and it was Nick Chubb. When they tried to run it behind him or any type of toss, the Chiefs were all over there. Why? Because they were bringing Tyrann Mathieu into the box, and Tyrann was all over there. Tyrann was following the fullback, going right to the play. Toss, he was all over it. And so where they had success, though, was out of 11 personnel. And for those of you who don't know, 11 personnel is 1 running back and 1 tight end. They ran out of shot. They were out of shotgun a lot in this game. Sometimes they got under center. They did run 12 personnel a few times, 1 back, 2 tight ends. But most of the game, I noticed they were in 11 personnel. All right, so I mentioned after they stopped the jet sweep with Jarvis Landry, they lost 2 yards. It was 2nd and 12. The next play, they got in shotgun. And Baker Mayfield was trying to pass, and he got sacked. So now it's 3rd and 21. So at this point, you got to play for the field goal. You know what I'm saying? You gotta do a safe play. You gotta run a screen, run the ball, you know what I mean? Or just a quick pass to get it out of his hands, because the Chiefs defense is built to get after the passer. That team is built to make you one-dimensional Their offense is so explosive. So they're typically meant to get the lead, force teams to go away from their running game, and where they can just pin their ears back and pass rush you. That's why they have Frank Clark as a pass rusher and Chris Jones, which is one of the best pass rushing deep tackles in the league. And they got Tyrann Mathieu as safety to pick you off when you're forced to have to get rid of the ball or just chuck it up, okay? So it really reminds me a lot of how the Colts were built in Peyton Manning's heydays. The same way. They really weren't a great run defense, but they were built to get the lead and then pass rush you and get after you with Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney, and they had Bob Sanders at safety. That was their playmaker in the secondary. So, again, it put them in position. All they could really do is play for the field goal. So the next play, what they did was, they got in shotgun again. Baker checks it down to Jarvis Landry in the flats for 4 yards, and they kick a field goal. So now it's 6-3. Chiefs go down and score a touchdown and make the extra point this time, 13-3 now. So the Browns get the ball to midfield, around the 44-yard line, going into the Chiefs, right? Well, there's 1st and 10 on the 44. They get a holding penalty. So they lose 10 yards. So now it's 1st and 20. Instead of subbing Nick Chubb for your actual pass-catching running back, the one that actually has that skill set to catch the ball, they proceeded to leave Nick Chubb in the game and try to throw the ball to him. So the first play was they were in 11 personnel. They motioned Nick Chubb out, and he ran a curl route. Baker threw it to him. Nick Chubb dropped it. The next play, so now it's 2nd and 20. Next play, they run a screen with Nick Chubb. He drops it again. Now they sub Kareem Hunt in when it's 3rd and 20. It's too late now, okay? And the reason why I say that about Nick Chubb, I followed Nick Chubb since he was at UGA, and I've never seen him exemplify consistency or the skill set to be a running back that can catch the ball fluidly out the backfield. That's just not his skill set, man. That's part of the reason why they got to have a Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt has that skill set. He showed that ever since he was in his Chiefs days. So, in my opinion, I think that Stefanski made the error by not subbing in Kareem Hunt on 1st and 20. Kareem Hunt catches those passes. Now, does that mean that they end up scoring? Maybe not, or maybe they at least get into field goal range, right? So it gets to 3rd and 20, and then, like I said, they subbed in Kareem Hunt. He tries to pass it to Kareem Hunt, same formation, and the ball gets knocked down. Why? Because the defense knows you have to pass. You're going to pass. They don't even have to play the run. They pin their ears back. They blitz you. And Baker doesn't have enough time, so he has it's quick game. Well, defenders are taught to, if they can't get to the quarterback, is to try to bat his pass down. Baker's only about 6'1". He's about my height. So in an NFL, that's a short quarterback. And when you're talking about trying to throw the ball and not having the time to really find an open window and trying to check it down, maybe a 5-yard pass so your running back can at least get about 5 or 10 more yards, of course that's going to be tough for him to try to get that ball out quick to Kareem Hunt in that situation. So then they had to punt. They punt to the Chiefs. What happens? The Chiefs go down and get a field goal. Now it's 16-3. Now you're in the deficit. All right? Now I'm going to fast forward to the Higgins play that everybody's talking about. So the Browns, they had a good sequence of play calling, and they get, they throw it past the Higgins. He gets it down there close to the end zone. Now, I get it. In that moment, you're really trying to score, man. You're trying to make a play. But in football and in the NFL, especially in the playoffs, you have to understand situational football. They had about a minute. It was about a minute and a half left on that clock when that play concluded. After he fumbled. So he's running and he jumps, probably 5 yards out, or close to it, trying to get into the end zone. And Sorensen, at the same time, is coming full speed horizontally and leads with his helmet and gets that helmet right around close to the football, and it separates him from the football, and he fumbles it into the end zone. Now I don't really like the rule, but it is what it is. That's the rule. What I think the bigger point is that they didn't call targeting. That should have been a targeting call, and then that would have given the Browns would have still had the ball. The Browns would have probably would have scored a touchdown. Just run it. I'd have run it 3 times in a row, and they would have scored a touchdown. So just to wrap it up, all of those things are the reason why the Browns lost. They should have never been in position to try to catch up with the Chiefs in the second half. We're talking about a different game in the second half if the game is even or if the Browns are in the lead. And then you're talking about when Patrick Mahomes goes out of the lineup because of a concussion. So, that's what I would tell you guys. That's the real reason why the Browns lost. Another thing to watch for, though, moving forward, assuming Patrick Mahomes clears the concussion protocol, it looks like he has turf toe. When I saw the replay and how he hurt his foot, and he took his shoe off, and they were checking him out, it looked like he has turf toe. So that's going to impact his ability to escape pressure and do some of those things moving forward, against the Bills defense who's been coming along late. So that's why I wanted to tell you guys, kind of educate you a little bit on what's the real reason. A lot of times in the media, man, these guys don't really, they have all these hot takes and all this stuff, but they're not really giving you the real reasons as to the whys, okay? Another situation, we're speaking of real reasons for what is the truth behind things, is Deshaun Watson. I want to get into that topic, man. So a lot of people have been talking about and asking this question about, well, why is it Deshaun Watson wants out now? He signed an extension with them prior to the season, and all of a sudden he's changed course. During that time when he signed it, he was crying. He was very grateful, had a lot of gratitude, and he was thankful for them showing faith in him. So these are some of these things that I'm going to talk about, people are addressing. Some of these things they are not addressing. Okay? So one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that I want to bring up, and this is the thing I have not heard anybody talk about. I want to bring up back when Bill O'Brien was the coach, and right when he traded DeAndre Hopkins. So after he traded DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, it sent the sports world in a frenzy. Everybody's questioning, why would they do that, right? So Michael Irvin reaches out to DeAndre Hopkins and tries to press him on, man, what's going on, man? They traded you for a ham sandwich, to quote Michael Irvin, right? Which is true. I mean, you got a washed up running back, you know what I'm saying, and some really late draft pick. You lost you lost some draft picks. So what Michael Irvin found out in talking to DeAndre Hopkins was the meeting he had with Bill O'Brien. He had a meeting with Bill O'Brien where it was a power struggle. Bill O'Brien didn't really like how DeAndre Hopkins had a leadership influence in the locker room. He compares him to Aaron Hernandez. He says the last time I've had to have a conversation like this with a player was Aaron Hernandez. Aaron Hernandez? Are you kidding me? You bring up Aaron Hernandez. Now, God rest his soul, and I feel bad for how that all played out. The man killed himself in jail. At least that's what they said, he killed himself. We don't know. He might have been murdered in jail. But Aaron Hernandez, remember, he went to jail or prison because of a murder. So you're going to compare DeAndre Hopkins, who I've never heard anyone say anything bad about this guy, to Aaron Hernandez. The other thing that causes me for pause and is very concerning is Bill O'Brien brings up about how, DeAndre Hopkins has multiple kids but multiple women. And so he basically talks about how he doesn't like how, his baby mamas and stuff is around the facility or around the practice or all those types of things. Now, Bill O'Brien might be a douchebag, but something like that, I feel like the coach has way too much to worry about than something like DeAndre Hopkins' baby mamas. To me, that sounds like that's something coming from ownership. I believe ownership told him, to address that. Or it could have been Easterly. You know, it could have been Easterly that said that. It could have been him. You know, Andre Johnson made a comment about Easterly. And I'm gonna read you what his tweet said. Alright? He said that if I'm Deshaun Watson, I will stand my ground. The Texas organization is known for wasting players' careers. Since Jack Easterby has walked into the building, nothing good has happened in or for that organization. For some reason, someone can't seem to see what's going on. Pathetic. So now Jack Easterby is the executive vice president of football operations. So this is what the biography or what they say. If you go to the team's website, it says Jack Easterby was named executive president of football operations on January 28th of 2020, being promoted to the role after joining the Houston Texans as executive vice president of team development in April 2019. In his role, Easterby manages all football operations and directs the overall culture of the organization. All right? So just keep that in mind. We're talking about culture. We're talking about different things. So that's one issue that I'm going to bring up as one that no one's talking about. The other issue I want to talk about is the hiring process. So the current owner is Cal McNair. He is the son of former owner Bob McNair, who passed away a couple of years ago. Now, obviously, Bob McNair's wife is part of owner as well too. But Cal, McNair, the son, he's the one running the team right now. All right. So Cal McNair hires a hiring firm to interview possible candidates for the new GM position that's been vacant for the past couple of years. And that hiring firm recommends Louis Riddick, and they also recommend, his last name is Khan, from the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy is currently the vice president of player personnel, or director of player personnel, one of the two, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Both of these guys are minorities. All right. Louis Riddick is a black man. So instead of you spend hundreds of $1,000s for help, and instead of taking their advice, you go with Nick Caserio. Now, Nick Caserio has New England Patriots ties, and for some reason, everybody keeps trying to get this New England formula as opposed to trying to find their own. All right. Now, hey, I'm not here to say Nick Caserio is going to do a bad job, but it's just a bad look. It does not look very good as to the way they handle it, especially considering Deshaun Watson. You tell Deshaun, hey, man, we want you to be part of the process. Deshaun has been on record saying, hey, man, he really would like for them to hire Eric Bieniemy. And you've had an opportunity to try to implement some things that are take in consideration Deshaun's suggestions. Now, as an organization, you don't have to do what the player is suggesting. But if you're going to go to him and ask for his advice, follow through with that. And so they pass over the minorities for another, for Nick Caserio, which is fine. Hey, that's their prerogative. Just to give a little bit, though, on Louis Riddick. Louis Riddick works for ESPN. He's been interviewing for GM jobs past few years and constantly getting passed over. Louis has a background in both playing in the NFL, and also he was a scout for the Redskins, got promoted to director of player personnel. Then he was a scout for the Eagles, and he got promoted to director of player personnel for the Eagles, and that was during the time that Andy Reid was still with the Eagles. So just keep that in mind, man. That's why you hear him talk a lot about Andy Reid and some of those guys within the Chiefs and the Eagles organization, because he has good relationships with those guys. He's worked with a lot of them. So that's why you hear Louis talk about that. And Louis is qualified. Regardless of him not getting any job, GM jobs, he's actually qualified for that position. But the other thing that's really concerning for me is that the Texans, instead of interviewing Eric Bieniemy during that window of opportunity to interview him, they don't even bring him in. All right, they're the only team that had a vacancy that didn't even interview him. And then after the press is hammering him and Deshaun Watson is the cryptic tweets and everything, not answering their phone calls. Now all of a sudden they want to try to bring him in for the interview. Well, you can't bring him in until the Chiefs get knocked out of the playoffs or the Super Bowl is over with. If they win they go to the Super Bowl. So they're really taking a reactive approach in this point. And so I bring all of these things up because there's one thing that all of these little elements are things that I'm talking about point to. And it seems like the organization does not view black men in the proper light. All right? There's certain tea leaves that seem like they're not quite on the up and up or view black men as equal in terms of, black men or minorities in particular as equal as your majority, which is a Caucasian or white man. Another thing that I almost forgot to bring up about is something that Bob McNair, to further illustrate my point. All right. Now I mentioned that his son is running the team, but back when the protest for the national anthem was going on, Bob McNair made a statement and said, we can't have the inmates running the prison. All right? And he doubled down on that with the Wall Street Journal. This is what he said. He regrets apologizing for that statement. All right? So just keep all that in mind. That didn't sit well with a lot of players, including DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson, but guys moved on. So again, this is not for me to try to talk about everybody's races and all that type of stuff. That's not what it's about. I'm just giving you a different angle as to the angle that no one's talking about. And I would not be surprised if we find out sometime in the off season that there's truth to that, and maybe that'll start to come about. So again, man, they got a lot of work to do, but I don't think, Deshaun Watson, I believe, had his last days in Houston, and for them, the best thing they can do is try to conduct a trade before the NFL draft, because after that point, then you're not going to be able to acquire any assets for 2021 season. You're going to be looking forward through the future. So if they drag it out, hey man, they may try to play chicken and see if Deshaun will give up, but that's why Andre Johnson said Deshaun should hold his ground. And I think something you should really pay attention to when Andre Johnson says something like that. Somebody that doesn't ever say anything. I mean, we've heard former players that played against him say, man, I've never heard this guy's voice, all right? This man ain't tweeted anything personally himself outside of ads for the past 2 years. And this is the first tweet he has? Come on, man. You got to listen to that, bro. Like, regardless of what you want to believe, there's something to it, all right? So there's a lot of things that they need to work on, but from the outside looking in, they really look like they're going to become the New York Knicks of the NFL. So, they got some things they need to work on, the culture, some things, and maybe there's some things personally their ownership needs to change who they are inside. And it's going to take some time for people to build trust and for free agents to want to go there. But, that's my take on it. And just to put a bow on that thing, man, and move on to something else. We're talking about, talking about improvements and things. I know a lot of people have been talking trash about Lamar Jackson and he can't pass, or it's all his fault. That's why they lost to the Bills. So this is the issue with the Ravens. Obviously, everybody knows they need to improve their passing game. Some people believe Lamar is not accurate enough. Some people say it's all on the offensive coordinator. It's some of both, but I think it's more on the system. Greg Roman has got to add more passing concepts to his offense. I hardly ever see them throw the ball to the running back, and J.K. Dobbins has that skill set. Okay, you hardly ever see that. I don't ever see screens, especially not running back screens. You don't see motion to try to get people, open. You know what I'm saying? I don't even see, many pick routes. All right. So this is what they need to do. They need to take a look and evaluate Lamar Jackson's skill set. It's been chronicled that Lamar is better throwing over the middle part of the field than he is outside the numbers. What I would do is I would look at New England's offense maybe about 3 years ago and look at trying to implement some of those concepts, because most of their offense is predicated off of inside the numbers. They would take some shots, but it was inside the numbers. The other thing, so what I would do is I would hire a passing game coordinator that can implement more, advanced or more things in the offense. And then also, too, he can take some things from other teams on a weekly basis. Similar to what LSU did with Joe Brady when they won the national championship. Joe Brady was a passing game coordinator, and he also called on third downs. On a weekly basis, he would review the red zone for every NFL team every NFL game on a weekly basis, and see what he could implement into the game plan each week. That's part of the reason why they were so hard to defend. That way, it gives the offensive coordinator ability to focus on other things. So it's just to distribute duties differently. But that's what I would do. The other thing is they really do need to. I do agree with a lot of these guys saying they really need somebody like Allen Robinson or Kenny Golladay. I don't think he would do as well with somebody like an Odell Beckham. I think he needs a guy with a large catch radius. Not really a burner, a guy that really creates a lot of separation. That's good and it can help him, but I think for him, he's already got a really fast receiver, a deep threat in Marquise Brown. I think he needs a different type of receiver like an Allen Robinson, somebody that catches the ball and is pretty much open even when, someone's draped over him. You hear this when people say, oh man, 50-50 balls for somebody like Allen Robinson is really like an 80-20 or 90-10. You need somebody like that. So the problem with that is I don't know if those free agents are going to want to go to the Ravens. They may have to look at a trade to find somebody like that. But prior to Lamar's first full season as a starter, they had problems trying to get free agents because people didn't believe in his ability to pass the ball and what their offensive philosophy was going to be. Well, they didn't do themselves any favors this year to instill any trust. So that's going to be a challenge. They may have to look at trying to trade with somebody, or they're going to have to look at draft and trying to find a receiver in that way. So that's the way I look at it with Lamar Jackson, and it's a shame, man. This guy gets so much criticism for things that are always all his fault. It's felt all on his shoulders. That offense, everything fell on his shoulders this whole year, and he's taken a lot of criticism. And to his credit, he's handled it well. And so, I really like to see this guy succeed because of the person he seems to carry himself well. He doesn't really seem to take shots at anybody or say negative things and stuff. He seems to be a really, really good dude, man. So, shout out to Lamar Jackson. I wish him the best moving forward, man. And the last guy I want to talk about that's taken a lot of criticism unfairly is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yes, we're talking basketball now. So Giannis has been getting a lot of criticism from people like Jay Williams and Kendrick Perkins, especially these LeBron guys, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with Giannis getting the defensive MVP last year, and he's got MVP 2 years in a row. Especially the MVP though. And a lot of those guys felt like LeBron should have got MVP because he had, I think, averaged between 10 and 11 assists last year, over 25 points. But half of those assists each game, it would be from Anthony Davis not getting back on defense. All right, he would stay on the other side of the court. The other team missed the shot, And LeBron would just throw a football pass to the length of the court, and Anthony Davis had an easy dunk or layup. You know what I'm saying? It's not like where James Harden gets his assists where he creates and facilitates to other people. But you know what I'm saying? Like to me, James Harden's 10 assists is different than LeBron's 10 assists, especially like last year. And, you know, again, I felt like that's something that maybe they took in consideration. The other thing, too, is, man, Giannis didn't have another superstar aside, you know, next to him. He still doesn't have another superstar. He has some all-star caliber players, and they got to upgrade in Holiday, Drew Holiday, but he doesn't have another superstar. The biggest reason why Giannis does not guard the other team's best offensive player, for one, in today's NBA, there are very few teams that have their number one option is a center or a power forward. It is a guards game mostly. You have some small forwards, you know, but most of the time these are perimeter guys that they're talking about. And Giannis does not have the lateral quickness to stay in front of these guys. And then especially when you're talking about as much as they run pick and roll, and when you talk when playing defense, and I learned this at a young age, you don't play defense with your hands and all this stuff. You play defense with your feet. You got to get a good base, your feet a little bit wider than your shoulder width, and you got to get a good base, and you have to move side to side. All right? And the way I was taught is when you defend somebody, you look at their numbers because they can't shake you. The numbers can't go anywhere. You look at their eyes or you look at the ball, all that type of stuff, you can get shook. But if you look at the numbers, they can't go anywhere. But again, Giannis, when he came in the league, he was probably more of a small forward. He was really skinny. As he's matured, he's put on more weight and more muscle mass. And so I don't know that he has the same foot speed. And I think he's gotten taller as well. And so, in my opinion, not even my opinion, it's factual. Giannis is more suited to guard Anthony Davis, you know, power forward as a center, or Joel Embiid. He can't even guard a Kevin Durant. Even though Kevin Durant's 6'10", 6'11", Kevin Durant's more of a small forward than Giannis is. He's quicker. You notice when he dribbles the ball, you know, he's got guard skills. So you're talking about not guarding the other teams. That's an unfair statement. LeBron doesn't do it. When has LeBron in key moments consistently guarded the other team's best offensive player? Let's go back to the national championship or the NBA Finals. The last time LeBron played against the Warriors. All right, and Kevin Durant was on there. There's one particular play where he dribbles ball down the court, and LeBron is literally running away from the challenge of guarding Kevin Durant. And he tries to throw somebody, I don't know if it was J.R. Smith or somebody else on KD to defend him. And you know what KD did? He came down the court and pulled up and shot a three in the eyeball. All right? So LeBron hasn't taken that challenge, so it's unfair to sit up here. And even when he was younger, he didn't take that challenge consistently. So don't sit up there and criticize Giannis Antetokounmpo for not doing the same. There's very few players that are the number one option offensively on their team that actually guard the number one option on the other team, especially if you're talking about position crossing. You know, Kawhi Leonard is one of them. You know, it's one of the very few players that when it's money time, he say, you know what, man, I'm a defend this dude. You know what I'm saying? Let me take him. Kawhi is one of the very few that do that. But there's not many guys, and I think he's taken unfair criticism. One of the reasons why they traded for Drew Holiday was so Drew Holiday could guard those guards, those really good point guards and shooting guards, because he's a really good defender. He's also a really good scorer. A huge upgrade from Eric Bledsoe. But you know that's why they added Drew Holiday. You know what I'm saying? And it's still they play good team defense. So you know that's my take on the whole Giannis Antetokounmpo thing. And I know I talked about LeBron and stuff, and I didn't mention I was going to talk about LeBron, but I had to bring that up just to put things in context. And a lot of these guys, man, they don't tell you the truth. They don't put things in context. They have all these hot takes, and a lot of times people eat it all up, and it's really false. So guys, I think this is a good spot to stop for today's episode, man. So I really appreciate y'all for tuning in for my second episode of Sports We Watchin Livin Talkin. I'm your host, Herschel, aka HersheyR47. That's my Instagram handle. I really appreciate if you guys will subscribe to my channel, leave some comments out there, so you won't miss anything. You'll always get a notification with my next episode. Until next time, y'all, much love. Peace.